The challenge? Make the Internet perform at its maximum level. The technology to accomplish this has changed drastically over the decade. Just what does it take to empower the world's most innovative, intensive apps in tomorrow's Internet of Things? Experts predict a future when an ecosystem of virtual and bare metal cloud hosting and collaboration services across a global network of data centers, optimized from the application to the end user and backed by rock-solid customer support and 100% uptime guarantee, will become everyday infrastructure. That future? It's not just here. It's already up and running at high speed. Greetings, everyone. It's Tuesday, July 8th, 2014, and this is Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mantella. I'm your guest host, Frank Baia. On this edition, the Tech Talk has the honor to present the insider insights of a global technology top executive into the high-performance Internet infrastructure world of managed services, data centers, and global networks, as we meet the President, Chief Executive Officer, and Board Member of Internap Network Services, Eric Cooney. Eric has a track record of success for leading technology companies in delivering shareholder value through a focus on long-term profitable growth. His visionary industry experience includes digital video business of NDS, a news corporation company, in April of '97, which was acquired by Tandberg Television in '99. He held a number of positions of increasing responsibility, including Vice President and General Manager, Americas, and Chief Operating Officer, before assuming his role as President and CEO of Tandberg Television in 2003. Under his leadership, Tandberg increased in market value from approximately $100 million to more than $1.4 billion when it was acquired by Ericsson Group in 2007. Eric continued to oversee global operations of Tandberg until leaving to become Internap President and CEO in March 2009. From the rapid and dynamic changes of the recent past to the predictions of even more exciting and powerfully performing technologies of tomorrow, to a candid insider perspective on the Atlanta technology market and prediction for its future global competitiveness, the Tech Talk turns to the top of high-speed, high-performance, 100% uncompromising technology infrastructure leadership as we speak with Internap President, Chief Executive Officer, and Internap Board Member Eric Cooney. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Eric, welcome to Tech Talk.
Oh, thank you very much, Frank. It's a pleasure to be here.
We talk about it all the time, rapid change, dynamic fluidity. I often jokingly say things have become exponential and maybe even phantasmagoric. Things change so fast. With change comes a sort of a shortness of memory. It hadn't been all that long ago when networks were internal and not external. There wasn't at least the knowledge and understanding we have today of the cloud. And speed was more internally concerned than obviously externally. Now it's a case, talk about it, whether it's video gaming or it's telemedicine, if you don't have the speed and the connectivity, you're not really in business. Talk a little bit about how things have changed over the last several years and maybe a little insight of where they are today.
Sure, it's really some quite exciting trends in the, let's call it the IT infrastructure landscape, which is obviously my business. And, I think the first change is really more of a financial-driven change where enterprises have gotten and are getting increasingly comfortable with the economics of outsourcing their IT infrastructure. So instead of building data centers, buying servers, buying storage, it makes and deploying all the capital to do that up front, they'd rather come to a company like Internap and let's say rent that data center, that server, that storage device from us. But also, to your point, there's a performance element that becomes increasingly important for those service providers or for those enterprises to outsource that IT infrastructure. And it could be performance driven by any number of trends we're seeing today, whether it's the explosion in mobile devices, explosion in big data, online gaming trends, just a whole host of kind of macro factors that are really driving increased pressure on IT infrastructure and the associated networks that are driving enterprises to increasingly outsource their infrastructure.
Kind of a fine line between revenue and performance. So I think it's a case where I understand your point, and I think most of our listeners would say kind of, well, of course that you'd want to have that trust and assurance, someone that's keeping up literally the speed, both technically and figuratively and literally, but also in the sense that time is money. Some of the things that we talk about, like when we talk about gaming worldwide or even information or e-commerce, I can't afford to have any latent problems that are going to be a concern, and I got to make sure that I get things not only from point to point quick, but up quick. It's at the speed of now. I heard it the other day where somebody won't even wait 15 seconds to see a website launch before they drop it and move on to something else.
No, absolutely. And so things like the web page load times, for example, become critically important to web-facing enterprises, whether that's an e-commerce company or an online advertising. Actually, online advertising is an interesting one as well. If you think about what actually has to happen as a user from the time you or I click on a hyperlink until that web page loads, behind the scenes, there's a whole auction taking place wherein advertising companies with ads to be placed bid on the advertisements available in that web page. They're leveraging information that they've gleaned about you or I as users, the cookies, if you will, the footprint we leave around the internet. And they're auctioning off that web space, that web page placement space, making decisions on how much as an advertiser they're prepared to pay for it, and then selecting an ad to place into that page, all in the small amount of time it takes for that web page to load.
So and we take it for granted. I mean, obviously, one of the things I'm thinking as you were mentioning that, old school would have said that back in the day a CEO didn't really want to know how it worked, they just want to know what it does. I think most people on the internet, most people that are dealing with any form of technology today, really don't think in terms of everything that you're talking about. Just give me the results.
No, absolutely. And, you had mentioned performance earlier. In addition to things like web page load time, the other dynamic that I think is quite interesting to consider is really technology or IT infrastructure technology today is enabling business development at a pace that's much faster than otherwise might be possible. So a simple example, think about a venture-funded startup company that, the next Facebook, if you will. They bring their application, their software to market with, of course, great expectations over how popular it will be and how many web users may want to come and access that particular application. Yesterday or previously, they would have needed to go out and deploy a whole bunch of capital buying servers and network infrastructure and storage devices and deploy that, whereas today they can purely in response, real-time response to dynamic load changes, i.e. how many eyeballs come to the website, they can literally scale up and scale down their infrastructure as long as they're leveraging a third-party IT services provider. They can scale up and scale down that infrastructure in response to demand, and that completely changes the financial model, the economic model for that small startup company. They don't have to have such deep capital investment and deep financial pockets to test out their new application. So,
and obviously, as a driver of innovation, it's not only a unique look at a evolution of business modeling, but obviously trial and error becomes a whole lot more efficient simply because we don't have to put as much investment into it. One of the things I'm thinking as we're progressively discussing this is almost when you've got to keep up on every single one of the verticals, and each one, I say many times when we're talking, we talk to so many CIOs and CTOs and so many verticals that basically it's the same thing, only different. And the cliche is that it is about clouds, and it is about mobile, and it is about high-speed connectivity, and now broadband infrastructure. And at some point, everything is going to be cognitive, predictive. And so with that, you're not only talking about speed, you're talking about volume of data. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, people generally refer to quote-unquote big data trends, and not only are we capturing an enormous amount of information across a whole host of industries. I mentioned advertising, but healthcare, as we digitize electronic personal health records, the whole field of genetics, of course, drives phenomenal data gathering. Automotive industries, I mean, on and on and on. Big data as a driver for enterprises is really becoming quite both a challenge and an opportunity, right? You gather all this data. First of all, how do you store it? And then second, once you've gathered it, how do you actually turn that raw data into useful information in a timely manner? So again, we come back to both literal storage requirements as well as performance characteristics of the IT infrastructure, the network, and the servers to actually enable you to do something with that data across all of these industries.
Internet of Things. I mean,
exactly.
Obviously, as again, we can talk about some of the amazing things that are happening in healthcare, and then there's something so intuitively, I don't know, uncountable. I don't know the right word for it, but I was talking to an executive from the Weather Channel, and they're actually talking about the impact of predictive forecasting on buying habits. That a sunny day can make a difference in a rainy day in Peoria, and retailers will be potentially ordering and displaying accordingly. I think in that kind of an environment, the role that I think most people obviously are aware of Internap's leadership, but maybe go into a little bit about that leadership and the innovation that you've had in terms of providing the kind of support, the kind of thought leadership and innovation that's helping all of these ideas drive.
Sure. It's, certainly as an IT infrastructure provider with all of these industry dynamics rapidly changing our industry landscape, it creates both challenges and opportunities. And for us, the challenges or the strategy has been we've chosen to be a high-performance IT infrastructure provider. Point being, if you as a customer care about performance, online advertising, big data, healthcare, online gaming. If performance is relevant for you, we want you to be able to select Internap because you can expect your applications to run better with higher performance in our infrastructure than if you did it yourself or potentially selected another provider. And we accomplish that in a couple of different ways. First and foremost, it's about, simply put, hiring really bright, really talented development engineers that develop, in many cases, patentable technologies that enable us to deliver on that. So one example of that would be some route-optimized networking technology that monitors in real time the performance of the Internet and routes our customers' traffic across the best performing network path at any instant in time. Another example would be actually a company that we acquired a couple of years ago, a company called Voxel that provided what we call a bare metal cloud offering. And that is essentially some technology that enables us to dynamically spin up and spin down servers in response to actual customer or workload demands. So those are two simple examples of high-performance technologies that we've brought to market in the past couple of years that are enabling us to deliver on that high-performance solution. And our challenge internally is, my challenge to the engineering development team is, of course, okay, guys, what's next in the pipeline 6 months, 12 months from now to continue keeping us at or ahead of the market from a technology standpoint?
Well, that's a great segue to the next question, and that is maybe go into some of those areas. When you start talking about, one of the things that, again, from a cliche standpoint, forget about 20-year, 10-year, 5-year marketing plans. We'll jokingly say, that was so 20 minutes ago. How do you look 6 months or a year ahead and try to dovetail where you're headed and where the market is going and meet up at that point?
Sure, it's as always a challenging topic, but the starting point is we've been very open to both organic and inorganic developments. So some of the products and technologies we build in-house, but we don't have a corner on the market. And in other cases where we see companies that have done some interesting things, we've also undertaken company acquisitions. So I think we'll obviously continue that trend or that approach. What I would also say is we look at certain, call it technology trends in the industry that shape the lens through which we look at the future. So you mentioned the Internet of Things. We talked a little bit about big data. We talked, of course, about scalable, flexible infrastructure. Maybe the one that we haven't mentioned yet that is clearly top of mind in a lot of CIOs these days is security, right? Security of that IT and security of the data. If they are choosing to outsource it, they want to have a level of comfort that it's managed and maintained in a highly secure fashion. So we spend a fair few cycles both in terms of the way we design and architect our solutions, but also spend a fair bit of time with some forward-thinking views about what the requirements may be 6, 12, 24 months from now in terms of IT infrastructure security.
There used to be an argument of tethered and untethered from an electrical standpoint. Your opinion in terms of activation, voice, touch, how do you see the future?
I guess from my standpoint, we're kind of indifferent, or at least in terms of.
Well, I know
Internet.
Your background is pretty extensive
Sure.
with video and watching the evolution of video happen over an extended period of time. Do you see it going into just huge cognitive databases of content that seemingly react to commands, or actual real communication in real time, and it's all voice activated?
Clearly, some applications and workloads will definitely be, as you say, voice activated and in real time. But I don't think the flip side of that coin will ever go away completely.
Because I'm thinking in terms of all of the roles that you guys play in the integral part that advanced manufacturing, robotics, and we talked about cognitive computing.
Sure.
Computers not only being able to be told what to do, but literally learning by sensors and literally over an extended period of time. That connection that Internet provides will become literally the arteries and the lifeblood of how all these systems will ultimately operate. I'm being primitive about the description, but I'm sure you see it in that context of some form.
No, very much so. I mean, in let's say our simplistic view of the world, increasingly as, if you will, enterprises push their data, both the computation and the storage elements, out into the cloud, the demands that places on the network that connects it all just grow exponentially, of course. You can't, as an enterprise, push that data and that computation out of your data center in the basement of your office without, of course, reliant on a high-performance, high-reliability network. So, yeah, we don't see that, certainly don't see that trend changing anytime soon.
Well, the point you made was simple but so powerful, and that is the ability to outsource it gives you the leverage to do experiments that you would never have been able to do as far as past management or business planning was concerned. You mentioned a little bit about the future of the next 6 months or year. Do they pretty much coincide with what you perceive to be the largest growth areas for Internap?
Yes, at this stage, those in terms of industry segments, I mentioned big data, online advertising, healthcare, et cetera. Yes, absolutely. That's where we see, for our value proposition, the high-performance IT infrastructure. That's absolutely where we see growth coming from.
Being both a global and an industry leader, it's a great opportunity to get a real perspective, put you a little bit on a spot, because We say that in order for us in Atlanta to really compete, we've got to be able to face the tough issues that we're not just simply competing with each other, we're competing with every single other enterprise, every single thought leader that's in the world. But while we've got you in, as we wrap up our conversation, give us a perspective on the Atlanta technology market, like maybe some predictions about the future, ideas for improvement, that kind of thing.
So, Atlanta has been a great home for Internap for many years. And I guess the first thing I would mention is, and you can probably infer this from the comments I already made about the importance of technology to our basis for competitive differentiation. So when we look at the Atlanta tech community, whether it's universities, Georgia Tech, UGA, Georgia State, Emory, we just have an incredible resource pool here in the local Atlanta market from which we can draw those future development stars. Also, when we look at the industry here in Atlanta, really all of those segments I mentioned and some that I didn't, like payment processing and mobile apps and network security, Atlanta is and has been home to some truly world-class innovative tech leaders across all of those segments, and it creates a really healthy, vibrant environment for knowledge, information exchange, access to talented employees, and really just a very friendly business environment for us to drive long-term growth.
So again, from a perspective world class, obviously we have to compete. It's really kind of a good point that you bring out. So many of our verticals, one of the things the Technology Association often talks about is where Georgia leads. And I think that we have such a strong sense of identity in place as it relates to the financial markets, the healthcare markets, and logistics, and so many other verticals that a lot of people don't realize that when they take a look at something like the Technology Hall of Fame, the amazing amount of thought leadership that Atlanta has provided over the course of the last 50, 60 years. It's been pretty amazing.
Sure.
Well, right up there and included in it, Eric, has been you and your leadership and what's going on at Internap. Guys are not only thought leaders and a great provider within your own industry, but I think also from a community leadership standpoint and as an example of the kind of thing that can happen when you're in Atlanta and of Atlanta is just pretty much a reflection of, I think, anyone who knows and understands you and understands what you guys are doing over there. Thank you so much for all the great things that you do. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of what I know is a real busy schedule to join us for a few minutes to talk about Internap here on Tech Talk.
Great. Thank you very much for your time, Frank. Definitely enjoyed being on the program.